A very good evening to all our dear viewers and welcome to this live talk show conducted by Global Education and Training Institute. Today we have with us Mr. Ananda Reddy, founder and CEO, Inner Genius from Bangalore, Karnataka, who has very kindly consented to be our live speaker for this show, and he'll be giving us an insight into inclusive teaching, insights from neuroscience research. But before that, I would also like our viewers to know a little more about Mr. Reddy. He has been a qualified professional with over 41 years of experience in the service of industry hotel, passionate about process of learning and helping people optimize their learning potential. He picked up the job at Taj Group Hotels in campus selection and rose to become the regional manager, chosen to be internal quality auditor at Taj Coromandel Hotel and held the team to prepare for certification. In the 2 years there, has received Employee of the Month award and was even nominated as the Associate's nominee for Regional Award for 1988. As principal of PES Institute of Hotel Management implemented innovative system known as SMILE by training the faculty team. SMILE, which stands for Self-Managed In-Depth Learning. One of the founder directors of ACE Institute for Creating Excellence, Mr. Reddy, crafted the modules on parenting and designed the complete system in the company. Today, he has very kindly consented to join us for this talk and give us an insight into the topic that he has chosen. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sunita. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir, you're very much clearly audible, and your
Wonderful.
PPT is also very clearly visible to all of us. Inclusive teaching, insight from neuroscience research.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. So, just to add a little more, is I come from a family of teachers. From my grandfather, my father, my uncles, aunts. A lot of them have been in the field of education, and that's, I guess, is what has motivated me to move into the learning and development space. And I have always been an excellent student. And as I started growing in my life, I came across and I started studying how learning happens. And I had picked up a few habits which was very helpful for me, and I just simply continued. But later on, when I started studying more about the neuroscience, I realized what is the science behind what I was doing, which was helping me out, and then fine tune those processes much better uh, to help people to optimize their learning and help the teachers so that they can bring out the best in each student in their class. So let's look a little more deeper in about today's topic, because one of the things is, even now most of the teachers are not aware of this the amount of strides that this neuroscience research has taken and how it can help them to become the most effective teacher. So in this particular session, we have called this as an inclusive teaching. So I said, no, our own, this session itself, I must make it inclusive. So let's talk about the, for whom this session is going to be very ideal. So those who have not started teaching but want to be teachers. Okay? For these people, I hope this will become an inspiration, and it will also help them to create a clear cut path for them to move towards becoming an excellent teacher and really create the future, because teachers are the ones who create the future of the world. The next generation is in our hands. How we shape them is what it is. That's why I bow down to every single teacher, whoever has chosen to be a teacher. Right. So the next level we look at are the new teachers. So for the new teachers, here would be very specific strategies that we will talk, specific inputs about how can they move and start becoming excellent teachers. Now, this is also will be good for experienced and respected teachers. Like how I was an experienced teacher before I got introduced to the neuroscience research. The neuroscience research has validated many things that I was doing from a scientific research based perspective, right? I hope it will do for that. And it will also showcase to you as to why it is working and how it is working. That is on the positive side. On the other side, it will also stop you from making mistakes by where you should not be using it, and what are the situations that which you should not use a particular teaching strategy or a teaching methodology. So where it is very useful, where it is not useful, is what neuroscience will help. So of course, obviously, in this short talk, it's going to be only an introductory in nature. And if you would like to know more, you're most welcome. Get in touch with Getty or get in touch with Inner Genius, and we are here to serve you. Right. So let's move on. Okay. So this is what I was for the experienced teacher. What you do is already effective and you are efficient. And so for you, what the why and how and the when and where to use is what I have already spoken about. So let's begin today's discussion with what is inclusive teaching. So let's define this clearly. Inclusive teaching are the ways and means of including every single student in your class in such a way that each student excels in your subject. So, see, you have chosen this subject because you like it and you are a master of it, you are an expert and you enjoy it. Don't you want every single student to excel in it? The obvious question is yes. So, all those who want to become excellent teachers, here is a few things that will help you in your journey towards that, right? Now, if you little more we observe the definition, it begins with the ways and means that you, the teacher, is going to follow. But it is turning into the result that the student is going to be achieving. This is how we are going to be moving across, keeping the end in mind. Like the 7 habits of highly effective people, Stephen Covey made that a very important habit of effective people, which is says you begin with the end in mind. So the end in mind for every teacher is the growth and development of the child, and so that should be for every child, isn't it? So that's where we are going to focus on today. All right, I think we are back. I'm sorry, there seemed to be some problem with the internet. Let me just get back to the slide. All right. I'm sorry for the technical glitch that we had. And So we were looking at the definition of inclusive teaching and how it moves from the activities that you do with the focus of bringing out the best in each child, giving the best to each child, and ensure that every student in your class excels in the subject that you have chosen to be a teacher for. So before we move on and look at how to uh, what are the positive steps that we need to take to move on, let us also understand what could stop us or what could make this task difficult for a teacher. So when we look at a typical classroom, there is going to be a huge variety in the students that we will have, right? Let's look at one part of it is saying a few students grasp very quickly in the very first sharing that when you do with them of a new concept or a new information. A few students would be struggling to understand even after explaining it in several times in several different ways and do with it. A huge number of students will be falling in between. So, how do you include everyone? Right? So, let's see this one particular thing that we are talking about. We could give it a heading called the speed of understanding varies from child to child, from student to student. So, this is a first challenge that you have when you have a group of students in front of you inside the classroom and you get that narrow, a small amount of time to make an impact and help them to excel in the subject. Next, if we look at the results that would be produced, a very few students will be scoring about above 90% of the marks, and a few students, very few students, hopefully none, but in reality, there will be a few students who will be scoring less than 20% of the marks, and all the rest of the students will be falling in between this. So if we need to give again a heading as to what this is, this will be all about recall whenever you want to recall the information that you have got it. Whatever you have learned, you should be able to, even in stressful times. See, when I was a student, exams were not stressful for me. But after I started my career, this has become crystal clear for me as to because in the workplace, when you're working, trying to do, there's a huge amount of stress that comes in. Very quickly, people want everything to be done. And then that is when I realized as to how the brain needs to be working at these times. Now, if you look at first, we spoke about understanding, or rather the speed of understanding. The second, we are talking about remembering or recalling whenever you want it, right? If you look at from a teaching perspective, from a teacher's perspective inside the classroom, these are the two aspects. We need to get them to get the information, the concepts, and the good of things into the heads or the brains of the students. That is not sufficient. We should also be able to help them to take it out and use it in their own life for them to go ahead to achieve whatever they want to do or create whatever it is that they wish to create. So these are the two aspects of learning, and we will go a little more deeper into this, right? And there are many other ways also the students will differ. So I can ask this question to you about the interest level. Just go back and think about your own when you were a student. Just bring it to your mind, which is the most favorite subject of yours when you were a student. Probably you are teaching that subject right now if you are working as a teacher. All right. And also, I want you to think about the least favorite subject, right? See, this is because interest got created, or you had a natural inclination towards that, or the environment has supported you, and in one particular subject there was a lot of interest, and in other subjects you were not. For me personally, science, maths, and languages were always I was very interested in. What was my least favorite subject was, we used to call that as, now it's called civics. Those days we used to call it as history and geography. Now, however, in the ninth standard, when I was a student, I topped the school in history and geography. What made the difference? The teacher made the difference. So you as a teacher, whatever is the interest level, you can take it, you can change it and you can bring it up about it, right? So let's look at the next part of it is the commitment that the student brings in. Yes, you can have a lot of influence on a student to commit to what you are, whatever you are teaching, whatever subject that you choose, right? Another aspect of this is learning style. I would like to define the learning style as a favorite way a student wishes to receive the information. And if you go and look at learning styles, I'm sure many of you would know it's that we can look at the kinesthetic or visual or auditory, right? So people like to see now, but when you involve more senses inside your classroom, more senses of the student you engage with, the student is able to learn easily, that is understand easily, and then he will also be able to remember those things much better, right? Up to this level is where the student has some amount of control. They can influence it, but there are also ways where the, it's the it's okay, sorry, the next one is also in your control, because we looked at this students part. Now let's look at the subjects or the topics part. Some subjects will be very easy for an individual student. If you take, it will go like a breeze. They just enjoy it and they go through, they involve themselves. But there are other subjects, they'll think it is like a rocket science, it's tough for them, right? Now, neuroscience has actually given this part of it, and till then I was struggling a bit about why do teachers. Now, there's one more problem that we teachers have is called the curse of expertise. In your subject, you are an expert. For you, it is very simple, but your students, it is struggling. Now, to bring it more into the your experience, you may not remember how you learned how to walk, but I'm sure if you learn to ride a bike or drive a car, you remember as to how you struggled. But today, you think it's very simple, right? So, what you think is simple is not necessarily simple for the student. So, this is one part. So, I was also for a long time, I was asking this question. Every single student comes to the school already well equipped in one language at least, right? Now, who taught? Is there a syllabus? Is there a teacher? Is there something that is structurally happening? Is something that we are doing, but the child is fluent in that language? How has that happened? Now, the neuroscience has given the answer for it, as it is because of the way that we have evolved, or our brains has evolved, right? So biologically, there are some things which are primary. We are, what one way of saying, we are hardwired in our brains, and those things are very simple. Now, without communication, could our ancestors have survived with all the wild animals in the there in the world at that point of time, and they don't have a proper houses to live in? No. So communication was something very important. And so language, learning language becomes hardwired for us. But if we go into these schools and we start talking to the teachers and to the parents and ask what are the difficulties they face, is they will all say that, oh, Hindi is very difficult. Kannada, no, no, no. Tamil, Telugu, no, whatever is the language. The languages are becoming a problem. Why it is so, right? Now, I can use my own personal examples of where it is. I'm proficient in 5 languages. And I think many of this, many of us Indians are at least bilingual, if not more than that. But the generations have been changing. Now the next in my home I have a daughter and a son, and both of them are proficient in four languages. My son is proficient in five languages. My daughter has a working knowledge in about, I think, eight or nine languages. All right. So we as parents have done something right. Yes, but more than that, the places where we were living when when my children were born and they were growing up, it was a multilingual place. We had neighbors who were speaking Hindi, who were speaking Tamil, we at home we were speaking Telugu, and English is a common language. So both my children picked up these languages just like that. And that is what the science is also proving, that it's saying it is hardwired. Now, why is languages becoming difficult? No, we can make it very simple. And in fact, Getty and the sister concerns of that, they have done a wonderful work in making language easy. So if you are new to them, you should explore that with them, right? And similarly, so the other primary thing is we can recognize faces. Recognizing faces is not an easy task. There's a huge amount of neural activity that needs to take place, right? So, but similarly, there is also the secondary part of it. For example, how to tie a shoelace, right? Whether you can tie a shoelace or not, you can still do very well in your life. So, in our brains, it's a secondary part of it. Same as reading, same as writing. So, how do we deal with this is what the neuroscience has given to us. Before this, we were looking at psychology to give us inputs as to how we can improve our quality of learning in the classroom and outside the classroom. But neuroscience gives it directly to us, right? The neuroscience through psychology also helps us from through an indirect route, but neuroscience, we can pick it up from there, and it makes us highly effective and efficient teachers, right? So this, when we bring this in, you see, in the history, when we look at it, India was the capital of the world learning. So India was world's learning center, right? Now again, we can become, and various demographics is also helping out. We are the youngest nation, in the sense the more than 60-70% of the population is in what we call as a productive age, that is 15 to 70 years, 15 to 60 or 70 years, right? And our life expectancy is going on. There's a lot of things that is coming in. We are on the verge of it. That's why I think the detox is helping out for us to take the leap and establish our country as the capital for learning, and the world will come to us. I'll talk about it a little more once again, right? But there are things which are, so the subject is in teachers' control. The students and are in the student. The teachers can influence. There are situations that is beyond teachers' control, which makes inclusive teaching a difficulty. What is the support that the child is getting at home? Some may not. What are the facilities that they have at home? Do they have internet? Do they have access to computers? Do they have access to the technology? Right? There could be health issues. The child, the parents, or anyone else over there in the family. There could be financial issues. There could be so many other issues on which the teacher has got no control and little or no influence to make a difference over there. But still, we can make a huge difference in the each child's life when we become inclusive teachers, right? So now that's about inclusive teaching. So let's look into neuroscience and understand them. So neuroscience is, the West has been studying this because they were doing this research. So this is what is coming from West, and for the rest of the talk, we're going to be focusing on the neuroscience part of it, which is the brain and how it works and various aspects of it, and how it can. And we will look at how can we use those research findings and make it. How do we apply it inside the classroom, right? But before that, there is another aspect of it. West has got very little clue, which is called as mind. Okay. Our ancestors, the rishis, munis of our culture, they have mastered this. Patanjali wrote Yoga Sutras. That's what it is all about. It's all about the mind, right? There are many masters here who have given us many tools what we need to do. We are not covering that aspect of it in this talk, but it is very closely connected. Probably we will do it on a some other day as to how to make the best use of the mind. By the way, the mind is all over our body, and we would look at it in a different time. But this is something that as a culture, that's why, that is another reason why we say the world will come to us, because we have mastered something which they have got no clue about, right? So now let's get into the neuroscience and understand some basic terminology, right? If you are a biology teacher, all this will be just like that. You would already know. You say, hey, it's oversimplifying. No, I'm just giving an introduction to the brain and the neuroscience. All right. So the brain is made up of neurons. The basic building blocks is called as neurons, and some pictorial representations are over there. All right. So now if we take the neurons. By the way, there are about some 8 billion or 80 billion neurons that is there. Even the child that you think is dumbest has got more neurons than what is needed. So there is, the God has not, the creator has not made any mistake. He has given ample. It is how we make use of it and how we help our children to make use of it is what is going to make a difference in the child's life. So it is the neurons coming together is what happens when we start learning. So the first one is the building block is the neuron. So the neurons has got dendrites. So you can think of it like, so this is a neuron, or this is a neuron, this is a neuron, and when it starts representing and wanting to explain, we put it into dots and we put it across. All right. So these neurons, you can think of it as the legs for it. These are the legs. These are what is called as a dendrites. Okay. Now these dendrites have got spine like things that is coming up from there. In fact, it is called as dendritic spines, right? And the next thing is called as the axons, or we can call the other part of it as the arms, right? Is called, now these arms has got um, we can call it as a fingertips kind of a thing, and then there are synapses. There is a gap between these two, right? But when one neuron, one dendritic spine gets connected with another neuron's axons, and the neuron starts firing together, this is what is a physically. When you learn something new, that's a path that is created. It's a physical path. When you think of a thought, it's a physical path in your brain. So thoughts are physical. We may not be able to see them, but it is happening in our brain. So this is the one small basic terms of it. There are many more, but this much is required for today's talk. The next is, we must also understand the regions of the human brain. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to get into this. Yes, I hope that you are inspired enough to go and find out more about this aspect of it. But for today, you need to understand that our brain has evolved. The evolutionary, the way it has done is that there are parts or three different brains, we could even say, or it's called the twin brain hypothesis, right? The very first one that is built is a reptilian, which will take care of our survival, and anytime there is a danger, it is what takes over. That is why when you are walking and suddenly you see something coming up, you will jump out of the way. You have not thought, nothing has happened for it, right? So that is where it is. It was essential for our ancestors to survive uh, in those days. So the limbic system is a little more, it is where we get emotions and where we understand, and it helps us a lot to have excellent relationships. What we are today going to be a little more talking about is a neocortex, or the topmost layer of it. It's, you will see all those, it is very thin. This picture is not very representative of it. Neocortex is a very thin layer, and it goes into the folds of the brain part of it. So this is where the long-term memory resides. All right. So we're going to be looking at that a little more. And neocortex is where the reasoning happens, where all the higher order thinking skills are coming into the place. Neocortex plays the maximum role, right? Another thing that we need to understand is, I already said, the long term memory is there in the neocortex, covering the complete brain portion of it. All right. The working memory is in the frontal lobe. All right. So we are going to be looking at the working memory is a very limited. So it gets something, there is something, it is staying for a while, then that goes off, something else comes and takes place in that, some other information or input gets into the working memory. So from the working memory we need to move things into the long term memory. That is when the recall becomes possible. Working memory and the neocortex, the frontal lobe and the neocortex both help us to understand, but this memory is stored there. Then whenever you want it, your working memory brings it back for you to make use of it, right? So this is the basic terms at this point of time. So let's move in and look at how can you make use of this as applications as a teacher. So let me paint a picture for you, right? If you're a teacher, or in when you were a student, in the classroom there were some people, you call as the best boy or the best girl, or a very good boy or a very good girl, boy or girl doesn't matter, but there's a very good students, right? You really like them. Why? Because you call them very good is because their behavior was good. They were very helpful, they're able to make friends with others, they're gelling with people, and they're respectful of elders, and so their behavior is good. You can see them, they are putting in a lot of efforts in that, right? They do homework, if not all the time, most of the time, and they, whatever assignments you give, they do it. And they volunteer to do a lot of whenever you call for volunteers. And in the class, as you are explaining, you ask the question and they will answer, which means the first portion of the learning has happened, which is understanding. Okay. Now, not all, but some of these very good boys and girls, in the tests or in the exams, they score very poor marks. All right. Now, this puzzles, and we don't know why. No, this is not. Then we say our exam system is not good. No, I'm not supporting the exam system. There is a lot of reform that is we are on the way of doing it with the new education policy that is coming into force. Yes, it will happen. However, it is not just that. This is where the long term and the short term uh, part, the memory part of it comes into the working memory, and the long term memory comes in. The frontal lobe, which receives the information and works with it, and then it gets stored in the neocortex. They trick themselves thinking that they have stored it in their long term memory. No, it is still in their working memory. That is why in the class, when you ask, they are able to answer. But from the day that they have learned to the day that they're facing the exam, there is a huge gap. And they struggle to bring back, and so the recall suffers for them. That is because they have not followed the way that of moving that information to the long-term memory, and uh, hence they can't recall it, right? It's not that they are not hardworking, no, they are put lots of effort, but still they do it. Right. So when, since we understand this, we can help every single child to move what they learn from the working memory to the long term memory. Now, how do we do that? Let's look at it. Okay, this is how you structure your class, right? The first picture, you can see the person is very highly concentrated, it is focused. So in the classroom time, you need to convert, you need to focus some time where they're focusing on, they are learning the new stuff. But you should not take it for too long. then it becomes a overwhelm and they become very tired. The children, this needs a lot of energy. By the way, as it is, the brain consumes a lot of energy, and during the focused learning time, the amount of energy it absorbs is very high and they become tired. So you need some diffused time, right? Now, the best of the best shifting to the long term memory happens when you are sleeping. So children need to be very active. Physically, they're tired, and then they go to sleep. Get a good night's sleep. When they get a good night's sleep, there is a lot of things that's happening in the brain for them to do it. Now we can also bring in the diffuse connecting time in the classroom. So how you do that? You give breaks, both mental and physical breaks. So physical breaks could be just, now you can even actually try that right now also, is that just stretch your body, move it, twist it, look at that, and then you see the whole thing would have changed in your mind. Whatever we have spoken of in the thing, at the back of your mind, it is getting shifted. So the work from the working memory, it goes to hippocampus. From the hippocampus repeats it for the into the neocortex, where the the neural connections will start becoming stronger. When in the focused learning time, the connections are happening, and in the diffuse connecting time, they're getting it better and better, stronger and stronger. So for that, the hippocampus takes care of it, right? This is what the science has proven it. So we know that giving small breaks is good, and then this is where there is no problem with attention span. We can enhance the attention span of every child by following some very good methods by which we can hold their attention and help them by, and then consciously shifting from focused learning time to diffuse connecting time, right? So, and these breaks are, we are talking about very minute, right? In some of the methods that we would be talking about a little later, we will talk about this as to how you would shift from the teacher to the student, and then how this is going to make it happen, right? And this is because of the way the brain wired or brain works. So now let's take this in the focused learning time. Okay, what we call as active learning will happen. Now, there is a misconception about what exactly is active learning, right? Now, let's look at a common definition of what exactly is active learning. In the During the active learning phase, you engage the student in the process of learning through activities and or discussions in the class. Opposite to that is passively sitting and listening to an expert. Now, the expert in the classroom is you, and this is yours. If you're simply talking, now I am partly doing it because of the way this we have structured over here. We're not able to have much of an interaction. But by the way, if you have any questions or anything, please put it up, and we will answer them towards the end. Right? So you need to engage the students in such activities that will help them in learning and not just simply listening. And it should also emphasize the higher order thinking skills. And most of the time, it involves students working as a group, right? This is active learning. Some people say, no, okay, they have to physically do something, or they have to move around, or let's get them to do something for it. No, it can simply be a discussion. It can simply be that you have given the break time and you told them, you said, okay, all right. Now I would say to you is next 1 minute, whatever you remember from whatever we have spoken so far, just make a notes. Let's take a minute for that, right? So you give these kind of breaks and allow the students to do it. And when they're making the notes, you give them that a couple of minutes to do that. So that is when once again the whole understanding starts getting deeper. That understanding is what is a normal one. Or let's also look at how the neuroscience defines the or says the active learning is, right? Active learning supports creation and most especially consolidation of neural links in long-term memory that underlie both basic and higher order conceptual understanding of the material. All right. So that is when the left side is a general way, and this is where we are talking about from the neuroscience perspective. There are neurons, there are links. You first form it and then you strengthen them. And while doing that, you are also moving the students along from basic conceptual understanding to the higher order thinking skills and higher order conceptual understanding. So this is what we need to do for it. So for that, you spend some focused time and you interpose it with the diffused learning time. It is not a waste of time. It is the most important time. The breaks are very important. Proper rest in the night is very important for a student because that's when the neural links are getting very strong. Because when information comes to the working memory, it goes to the hippocampus and to the neocortex. The hippocampus can either first it will look in, and when the information is coming, it is receiving, right? As long as it is coming, then when you give the break or a diffuse learning time, it turns around and then receives the information and then processes it and
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe Mr. Reddy is once again. Sir, are you able?
yes,
Hello.
I'm able to hear. I'm able to hear. I
Yes.
will present again. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Please
always
continue from where you left, sir. Yeah.
right, right. I'll do that. I'll do that right away. Just let me share. Right. So I think we yeah, I think we were at this. I was the definition of active learning is what we were looking at. So all activities are not active learning. So it needs to specifically engage the higher order thinking skills, and this is what we need to be doing about. Right. So now, how do you make use of this in the application as a teacher? You take down the all the information that you have and break it into small chunks of information so that the working memory can grapple with it and then pass it on. So one skill that you have, but you need to ensure that the children develop are identify the keywords or the phrases in the content that is there, because from the keywords they can already build up the rest of it, right? Once this is done, you need to scaffold the chunks of information after the other, one after the other, just like how the scaffold can take you, or a ladder can take you from the bottom to the top level. This is a skill that you need to develop as a teacher. You scaffold information one after the other, and then you continue to take it up and take it forward. All right. So uh, this is a very important skill that you need to learn as a teacher, right? Then along with that, you intersperse your classroom from to retrieval practice. This is the where the neural links start becoming getting stronger and stronger, right? Like I just said, take a minute and write down the notes. That's a retrieval practice. Okay, you ask the students to share with each other what they have learned in the class, and so this is an activity. This becomes very active. The students are very involved. So whatever you have said, it comes into the part of it. The second thing that you do is it takes a long time for this neural links to get strengthened. So you take this and you give spaced repetition of the same content. All right, you can do it in different ways. So you are basically, we call that in the olden days, we call it as a revision, but it's not just one revision. It's you take one and you intersperse it with the new information, a repetition of the whole, new information, repetition of the whole. When it is keeps happening, it becomes much better. We can make it into small chunks. Then we allow the student to go out and explore what they have learned and how it is applicable in the life. Let them go and look at for where the new things that is over there. Give them the problems to solve. That is another way of extending and strengthening the newer links. But remember, the caveat here is that this problem should be something that should be connected to them, right? You link it to the lives or under of these children, and then you give them the problems, real life problems, what they face and wherever it is and how the things are. You create the scenarios and give it to them, like how I created a scenario of, otherwise you consider as a very good student getting pathetic marks in the exam. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. So how do we handle that particular part of it? Okay, so you can bring in these kind of it. That's an example, and but you bring it for your own subject, and for every subject this can be done, right? So let's move forward, right? Now, what do we do for a biologically secondary content, like what we call as rocket science or tying of the shoelaces? So because it's called as a desirable difficulties. See, in the very early young age, it's fun way that we teach, and in the kindergarten and maybe in the first and second standard. But then later on, uh, expecting all teaching at all levels to be always just fun and games. No, right? What we call as academic rigor has to be brought in, but it need not become tough, it need not become hard, it need not become not enjoyable, it can be enjoyable. So that's why we call it as these difficulties are desirable difficulties, right? Now again, go back and how you taught a child to do a shoelace, tie a shoelace, how to brush the teeth, how to do so many of those things that is required to be done, is you never admonish them in the beginning. All right, you give them enough of deliberate practice. You, in your content, you look for all the secondary content, reading, writing, and all that are secondary content. Math is secondary content. So all the things that we do in the school, most of it falls into the secondary content. So you need to give them deliberate practice. But remember, as a teacher, you must provide them with corrective feedback. This is part of the active learning. All right. So this is one part that we have looked at it. Let's very quickly review some fundamentals that we need. So this could be useful for all of you. In my live sessions, whenever I worked with teachers one-on-one or to a group, I ask this question: in teacher teaching versus student learning, which one is more important? Now both are important, don't say both are important. I agree with this, and what I have been saying is also there, and what I'm going to say further also will give the importance of excellent what an excellent teacher can make a difference. I spoke about my 10th standard history geography teacher, how he made a huge difference for me, and I love that subject even today. All right, how that has happened. So in your case, right, now in that many times that I have done for it, many most of the people say student learning is more important. In the inclusive learning also, we defined it that way: the student has to excel in your subject, so it is a student. right? Sometimes when they say teacher teaching, we have expanded that and we say students are sent by the parents, children are sent by the parents to the school so that the child can learn, right? So that is the goal for it, and we are creating the future, so we need to be focused on what the kind of results that we need to bring in. So it is the student learning that we must keep. So all our activities are focused towards that. So the activities becomes two different categories. There are teacher directed activities and then there is a student directed activities. In fact, the whole system of Smile that I developed and implemented and I trained my team of faculty in the college is, and then subsequently in the K-12 school where I was a dean, I've trained all the teachers on in these. This is teacher directed activities and then there are student directed activities. The simple question that is asked is, do you want the student to take the responsibility for his or her learning? Everyone says yes, right? Now how do you make it happen is you begin with the teacher directed activities and then you move on to student directed activities and you give them with this. So here is the clarity for the practice that I have put together. In the teacher directed activities, you give what is otherwise known as also direct instruction. You are giving instructions, you are giving them inputs. All right. So this is driven by you. So in this phase, you first do something and then you do it together with the students. So let's take a maths as a better example. You write a maths a question on the board and then you solve it and then you give it to the children. The children do it. So you both of you are doing it in your presence, right? And then you break down all the okay, let's go left to right also. So the student directed approach is giving more independence to the learner. It is driven by the student. This is when you pass it on and you give them, you do part of it, right? And then you extend it. This is very important because that is where progress is going to happen as a society, and we are making it happen inside the classroom. We are putting the seed over there. It will become a huge tree one day, and you break it into this short segment of information and then you model it and you demonstrate it. So when the student directed activities are taking place, you are not the sage on the stage. You become a guide on their side. They do all the work. When they struggle, you help them. When they do well, you applaud, you encourage, and you say go forward for it. All right. Instead of teacher modeling, you would be giving them that's a spelling error there. It's a problem based work is what you will give over there, right? And this yeah, so this is an example of how errors creep in. All right. So someone needs to check it and then you give a corrective feedback to the student, right? So you demonstrate, whereas the children there then go and start inquiring about what's around their world and they start exploring it by themselves. Whereas in your classroom inside, you are giving them a guided practice, step by step. You ensure the retrieval practice happens, because once that happens and when they go back and you do the spaced repetition, it starts happening on its own by that. You give a corrective feedback to them whenever there is going wrong. Now, as we move forward, the teacher's time needed with the student starts reducing, and the student starts putting in a lot more effort to learn your subject. Another question that I used to ask the teachers is that how much time do you get to see that a child learns your subject? And teachers would normally talk about the classroom time. No. I say it's 24 bar 7, 365 days. In the whole year, they have got the time to master whatever is the portion that you want to cover about it. That's plenty of time. Now you get that into the mindset, and neuroscience is proving that yes, it continuously happens even when the students are sleeping. All right. So this is for clarity practice. By the way, later I'll share my contact details. Any of you want any of this content, it is I will share it with you. Right. So this is in closure of that. Properly done teacher directed activities sets the students up for successful student directed learning, right? So they start taking there and then they go extend, and this is when a student becomes much more or much bigger than a teacher, and a true teacher actually gets the maximum amount of joy when their students have excelled in life. And that joy is what is keeping me, and I'm sure all of you, in the profession of teaching. All right. So now I want to leave you with a tool which we have developed. So here I want to talk about what the founder of Infosys, Mr. Narayan Murthy, said in a session for business owners. He said, so he said, when they started Infosys, what were the qualities they were looking for in the employee, for their potential employees? He said learnability. And then he defined what is learnability. Learnability is the ability to arrive at a general conclusion from a specific incident. Okay, so there is a specific incident that takes place, you arrive at a general conclusion, and then take the general conclusion and apply it in different walks of life, in different aspects of the job. That's called learnability. Now, if you know Kolb's learning cycle, it matches that. Okay, whether it is a concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and then active experimentation. Right, you go through with it and you do it. He says what he said, and that is matching. Now, before I heard Narayan Murthy to say, before I learned about Kolb's learning cycle, I had started working with the students, and I developed the tool which I call as a effective note making methodology. Right now, this is a tool that I will, whoever can, you can send the, I'll share my details, and you can ask for me, and I will send it across. Behind it, this is how simple the tool is. There are 4 stages that you need to take your students through. So the first portion is when you are there with them and it's absorbing. So it could be when they're reading something by themselves, they're watching a video, or you are talking to them. Right, during the absorb part of it, they write down, they don't worry about neatness, they use abbreviations. The critically important there is suspend judgment. They do not do whether it is right, wrong, this, they just absorb, just like a sponge. Okay, this is when the basic neural connections are happening. We can do that later. Then later on, during the diffuse time of learning, they need to think about it, they need to relate it to their own experiences, they look for the good points or agreeable points. Now they write down only those good points very neatly. Leaving there is not enough, they need to relate it to their present circumstances so that they'll start applying it. And whatever they write here, they start with action words, they prioritize. The most important thing here is act today. At least on one aspect, they must act today. So it starts coming into whatever they are learning, coming into their life. One way of acting today is whatever they've learned on that day, they can go and share it with somebody. It could be with their the other students and their friends, it could be somebody at home, it could be anybody, because while sharing, retrieval and repetition is happening, so it starts becoming stronger and stronger. All right, but in the note making tool, we say create a caption for the page. So that means you need to process, you need to give a heading for it, and later on you can use it as an index when you are reviewing, and you look for good one liners so that it's easy for you to remember, it becomes catchphrases. And then this portion you write it very big. All right, now how do you set it up, how do you teach your students to start using this tool, so that when you are teaching, they are very actively involved. And so that is why it is a note making tool, not note taking tool. It is not note giving tool. It is the students will start making notes on their own, and then they extend it, and they apply it in their life. All right, so this brings me to the end of today's session. With the glitches, we have gone little over time. I hope it's been useful for all of you. So if you need more information, here is my email ID is there, my WhatsApp message is there, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You look for Anand Reddy, or Reddy Ananda is my profile address. So please do come. And now I want to thank GETI and all the organizations that are part of. You are doing very wonderful work, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and come and share what I am excited about to and want to take it to as many teachers in as many places as possible and make it happen for the students. Okay, so that's it as far as the presentation is concerned. So I'll stop sharing and
Thank you so very much, sir, and thanks for
my pleasure.
accepting our invitation and being our live esteemed speaker for the day. And here we would like to conclude the talk with one or two queries that have come up through the viewers. And
Sure.
the first query being that what is the first aspect that a new teacher has to start with to become an inclusive teacher? And one more question has come up from a few corners that what can the experienced and respected teachers do to make use of the research findings in neurosciences? How would you like
Wonderful.
to address it, sir?
Yes, both are wonderful questions. We'll ask them. We'll use that as two different questions. See, for a new teacher, what I would say is first learn to love the children or include the children in your experience for it and treat them with respect, right? So, one teacher had said this very beautifully. He's from Sweden, and he said this that earlier I used to teach math to children. Now, right, I love the children, and by the way, I also teach them uh, math. So what happened there is that the whole thing has shifted. So the new teachers, please remember that it is all about you bringing in and first focus on this on the students. It is the we are there for the student. So the minute you bring that mindset into place, everything else will start falling in the part. All the other tools, techniques, strategies, all that can be learned, all that can be incorporated, but this is the quality that you need to that new teacher need to develop and bring to the classroom. They bring it to the classroom, 90% of the battle is won. The 10% we can all help them to do with this. This is also now linked to the second question about what the experienced and the respected teachers can do, because they've gone through this process. They have developed a lot of strategies and a lot of things which they can share with the new teachers. That is fine, but that is simple. But I'm going to ask them something more to focus on. See, they are respected. Now teaching has become quite smooth for them. It has become like a primary activity biologically. They can, whatever is the situation inside the classroom, they'll be able to manage it. That's fine. Can they now turn their focus onto creating the environment that is conducive for learning for both teachers and for the students? So it is the creation of that atmosphere, removing all kinds of inhibitions, making it an exploratory part, making every child is getting enough encouragement and support, where making mistakes or falling down is not a bad aspect of it. That is how the infants learned how to walk, how to eat, how to speak. All of that has happened because nobody admonished them. Nobody focused on the mistakes they made. Everybody focused on the good things they did. By bringing that part of it, making the whole atmosphere in the school appreciative. So they appreciate the students and they become role models. They encourage the younger, the newer teachers to uh, develop further, and they again model their own lifelong learning. Right now, this complete neuro-based science is something within the last couple of years that I have been studying and I've been looking at. I said, this is wonderful, wonderful, and I want to bring it on and share with as many people. And so there is no end. There is no end to learning, and whatever we learn is going to be a very small portion of whatever is there. Right. So how we can do that, and so the teachers who are experienced and respected, they have the power. Management listens to them. The academic leaders like principals and others, they listen to them when they put it across, and things can happen. And so truly we can the old systems we can disrupt completely and create such positive environment in the schools that we become, once again I come back saying, we become the center where the whole world comes to learn. Okay, be it spiritual, be it how to develop the mind and how to control the mind, or be it in the physical sciences. The physical part of it, West does a lot. We need a lot to learn from them. But in these all the things that we can do, so we continuously learn, we continuously share. Okay, so that's what I would request. And when I meet with the experienced teacher, that's why I demand with them. I put it across and I say, "Hey, can you do this, please?" So that's a message that I would give to them.
Thank you so much, sir, and thanks for giving us more in depth insight into the topic that you covered today through your talk. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Ananda Reddy, founder and CEO in a Genius from Bangalore, who spoke to us and gave us more insight into inclusive teaching and to shape the minds of the next generation of students and inspire them to become leaders of tomorrow, to have a better understanding level and disruptive change in education to be brought about. That is the need of the hour. To partner with us, to partner with Global Education and Training Institute, you all are most welcome to join your hands with us with this movement, literacy movement. You can mail us at scaleup@globaldream.guru or WhatsApp or call us at 91740 840 6000. Till we meet next, it's Sumita Bhatt signing off for the day. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sumita. I also want to once again thank GETI and Sunita Gandhi and you for making this happen. So thank you very much. And I wish all the best for all the teachers. And I'm here to help every one of you. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining. Thank